Good morning, good morning, good morning. Can I have everyone's attention? I know I'll have your attention when you stop talking. You're looking at me. So when everyone looks at me, start speaking, keep speaking. All right. Hey, got a couple announcements. One is sheet at your table that anybody that's doesn't come to your table anymore, just kind of one line them out. If your table leader isn't here, just kind of, and if you're not really sure, Bruce, I'll look at your table. Leif isn't here today, he told me about that. But any additional people that are at your table, that just write their names in, their contact information, phone number, email. All these tables are kind of fluid, and we want to know where everyone's at so we can check up and love on you guys correctly. The other one is we had a YWAM Emerge Ranch Work Day a while back, and a number of you participated in that. So we're going to have another one September 27th. It's at the ranch. There's some more cleanup to do, maybe some more wood to cut. I know I split about, I don't know how many cords of wood on that splitter. But it was a fun day, and afterwards, they fed us, and afterwards, we had a little cigar fest, So, I mean, if you are partial to cigars, bring some, and we can do that afterwards. But it's going to be a Saturday, probably like a 8 to 5 kind of thing again. So, save the date, put that on your calendar, okay? Update these sheets as soon as possible. As soon as they're updated, someone bring them to me. I'm going to be updating them while we're having our session here today. And hopefully by the time you guys leave here today, I'll have a printout of everyone that's supposed to be at your table with a copy for everyone at your table. So you'll all have everybody's contact information for your table. So.
Great. Thanks, Al. Good morning, men.
Good morning.
Couple of quick things before I begin this morning. As I was looking at my notes for what I want to share this morning, I realized that we're unpacking these differences between men and women and how we are to honor each other and our families, that we're dealing with the subject of fear. And as those of you who are part of our church know, that's the subject that Steve is diving into, and he did an incredible job Sunday kind of talking a little bit about that. And we are living in a culture today where that is probably being manifested more than certainly in my lifetime, maybe in all of history. And a lot of it is deliberate. If any of you are following what's going on really around the world with Marxism and the whole concept of critical theory, which maybe a lot of you have never heard about critical theory, but that's the overarching concept that's influencing our kids in all of our schools really around the planet right now. It has to do with the oppressed and the oppressor and the inequities that exist because of that. And all of that is being leveraged by the enemy to cause what we're seeing on the streets today. And I'm writing an article right now that'll be released this week. The title is Anger, ... the Mask for Fear. Because that's what anger really is. And so when insecurity and fear creeps in, anger is usually the result. And with anger, there's 3 ways to manifest it. You can either internalize it, vent it, or control it. If you're a believer in Jesus Christ, you've got a much better opportunity to control it. That's what God is calling us to do. We'll talk about that another time. If you internalize it, it hurts you physiologically, and that's why people are killing themselves. But sadly, for many people today, they're doing what? They're venting it. And that is what you're seeing manifested on the streets of our cities, many of them, and really around the world. And the enemy loves it. He perpetuates it, he loves it, and he wants to get us against each other, and the strategy is working until we pray and God steps up, which is what we're all praying for. But this is a very, very important topic, particularly as it relates to the kinds of things that can happen in a relationship between a man and a woman. And by the way, I'm reminded again this morning, Steve was talking about, he was saying thank you guys so much for our paying attention to getting people out to vote. Pretty much every week, Pastor Steve talks about it. We have a registration set up now at our church for those of you who are maybe here from other churches who really want to encourage you. If your church is not doing this, to please encourage them to do it, and to please, please, please register to vote. There are a lot of people that I hear, a lot of Christians that I hear that say, I don't know if I can vote for either candidate or either party. Let me just say, if you're not voting, you're voting, because you're still leaving room for the worst of the two evils to pick up a vote that you really don't want them to have, because it's pretty obvious that we're going in two very, very entirely different directions right now. For those of you, by the way, watching on live stream, welcome. We're getting a larger audience all the time, people that are watching from around the world. We welcome you this morning as well. But today the topic is A Man and His Wife Part 2, and it all started in the garden. Some of you guys have heard this because when Pastor Steve and Liz and Cindy and I did a couples conference a while back, we talked about this. Some of you guys were there. But in the garden, in fact, that's where the whole evolution that we're seeing happening today began. God created man and woman, and they had it made, did they not? They had everything they needed. They walked and talked with God. They had an abundance and variety of food. There was peace. There was tranquility. There was security. All the things that we human beings were created to desire was there for them. They had a Father God with them. And they walked in the garden, and they had no in-laws, and they were naked. I like the last two are my favorite. Anyway, so when sin entered, what happened is immediately fear and insecurity set in. They realized they weren't naked, and what did they do? The first thing they did was try to cower and cover up. From everything from the fig leaves to hiding out, all of those things, a natural thing that we do when we're insecure or fearful is we tend to do those sorts of things. And so the fear and insecurity set in right in the garden, and what happened as a result of that is that when God discovered this, he came to them in Genesis, and this is what he said. To the woman, he said this. He says, because of what you have done, I will greatly increase your pains in childbearing. With pain you shall give birth to children. So now there's a kind of a curse that's happening. And your desire will be for your husband, and you will rule over him. Now be careful with this, gentlemen, because in the context that's being shared here, rule over does not mean lord it over. It means a woman will desire safety and protection. You would become a place of security for her. That's her greatest desire. So a woman's greatest need, therefore, as a result of what God has said in Genesis, her greatest need is security, and her greatest fear is abandonment. And by the way, abandonment doesn't mean getting in the car and driving away, although that certainly qualifies. Abandonment could be something as simple as looking at your tablet or your phone while she's trying to talk to you, which, by the way, I've been guilty of numbers of times. How many of you know our women are very sensitive? They want you to look them in the eye. They want to know that they have your full attention. So abandonment could be something that simple. But certainly there's a lot of other things that would qualify as well. Now to the man, he said something completely different. To the man, he said, to Adam, because you listened to your wife and ate fruit from the tree about which I commanded you, you must not eat of it. Cursed, listen, is the ground because of you. Through painful toil you will eat food from it all the days of your life. By the sweat of your brow you will eat your food until you return to the ground. Now, please understand, the concept of work was pre-fall. God, some people say, well, work happened as a result of sin or the fall. No, God is a worker, is he not? He created us to be workers, to be fruitful, to tend the garden. And so what he's saying here is, as a result of sin, you're still going to work, Buster, but it's going to be by the sweat of your brow. It's going to be tough. It's not going to be easy anymore. So as a result of that curse, the man's greatest fears and needs are different. His greatest need is for significance. And our greatest fear is failure. We men we desire to be able to be significant, to be able to do something and step back and say, wow, look at what I just did. Or we're like, I like to say sometimes we're like little golden retriever puppy dogs. You know, you pet us on the head and we just go crazy. We just love to believe that we have really done something worthy. Now, what happens in a husband and wife relationship is where I'm going with this, because our reaction to our fears and needs are very different. When a man, how men and women respond to fear, a man's response to failure is he tends to be, I'll leave this on here for just a minute, these things that are listed here, becomes, well, that's a woman, I'm sorry, let me go back to the man. When a man's response to failure, we tend to withdraw. When we feel like a failure, we tend to withdraw, we get distant and cold, we preoccupied, we emotionally kind of check out, we kind of veg. That's our normal tendency when we feel like we failed, is we kind of get quiet and kind of back away. We're not there for our partner. Oftentimes when I'm feeling like I'm not hitting on all cylinders and I'm struggling, I'll do that. And Cindy will have to decide what's going on with me, because she can read that in the right way or the wrong way, which I'll get to in a moment. So when we are feeling like we're hitting on all cylinders, we're the opposite of all that. We're communicative, we're fun to be with, we're a partner to our spouse, we're there for them. So when we feel like our needs are being met, we're really great to be around. When we feel like a failure, we tend to withdraw and get quiet. Now for a woman does not react to her fears and needs quite the same way. When a woman feels like she's being abandoned, she becomes critical. She attacks. She becomes more demanding and negative, and there's very little support there, and she avoids intimacy at all costs. I mean, the whole intimacy thing, the whole sex thing, we don't have to time to get into a lot of that in detail today, but you guys know the whole thing. With a man, it's sex first, talk later. With a woman, it's what? Let's talk first and sex later. And how many of you have realized that if the talk goes good, it's a good thing? I mean, because they're emotional beings, and they really need to be satisfied at that deep emotional level. Not so much for us guys. It's kind of a checklist on our to-do list. You know, we're gonna have sex, and so what typically happens is we get into what I call the no-win cycle. The no-win cycle works like this. Okay, so I feel like I am not hitting on all cylinders, and so I withdraw. Cindy looks at my withdrawal as what? Abandonment. So when a woman feels abandoned, what does she do? She attacks. When a woman attacks a man, what does he feel like? When a man feels like a failure, what does he do? Have I just described some relationships here? It's a no-win cycle. Now, and this happens, and you can probably see it and think about it in the context of your relationship, and you'll have a chance to talk about it here in just a few moments. When this happens, whose job is it to break the cycle? Huh? All right, one guy, whisper, man. Come on, seriously, whose job is it? If you're the spiritual head of your home, you think you have a responsibility. The most mature in a relationship. I don't know if for a long time, it was not me. It was my wife. She was the most mature in the relationship, Jay. And that does happen. Look, there's nothing wrong. I can't tell you how many times my wife has been the one that breaks the cycle. I'm not saying both of us can't do it, but I'm saying as men, we need to watch out for this. We need to step up and be the one who says, okay, honey, there's something going on here. So, you've heard me say this before, that you can tell the character of a man by looking into the eyes of his wife. Let me say that again. You can tell the character of a man by looking into the eyes of his wife. And gentlemen, that is a true statement. I can't tell you how many times I've looked in my wife's eyes, and I see it. I see it, but I'm not sure I want to deal with it. Because if I deal with it, there's a good chance it's going to be about me. Not always, but often it might be about me. So, we're learning. We're still learning. We've been married 55 years. If I'm feeling down and I'm feeling like I want to just get away and vegetate, and my wife will sometimes say to me, like, we haven't talked in a long time, what's going on? Or she can become angry. She can do one of two things. She can either look at what's happening and in her mind think, well, something's wrong with this man. He's not feeling good. Maybe it's something at work. Maybe he feels like a failure because he tried something that didn't work. I need to minister to him. She'll do that often, more often now than ever before. Or if she's feeling insecure and she may read what I'm doing as abandonment to her, then the conversation is very different. Same thing with me. When my wife becomes overly critical, when I think she's attacking me, and it's not deserved. I don't ever think it's deserved, of course. But when I start to think that way, I have a decision to make. I can fight back, I can withdraw, or I can say, okay, honey, okay, and I've done this, and just grab it and say, what's really going on here? What's really happening? And then we'll have a conversation, and we'll end up praying about it, and God will take care of it. The way that I like to demonstrate this is, let's see, where's Al? Al, come here for a minute, just for a minute. I want to use you as a prop. The way this works is we're looking for significance and security, and I have these two rocks to indicate how this works. So a man is looking for significance, and I'm going to pretend like Al here is my fiance, and we're going to get married. Al and I are going to get married. Honestly, you're the ugliest woman I've ever seen in my whole. You really
All
are.
women
So,
look like me. We wouldn't have to worry about lust in the Bible.
no, that's very true. Yeah, that's true. Anyway, so we're going to get married, and so she comes to me. I really like this. This is really fun. She comes to me, and she has, when we're going to get married, she has her need for security, and I have my need for significance. And when we get married, we decide to trust each other with those needs. So she gives her need to me, and I give my need to her to steward that. So what happens, and when Cindy and I do this, typically she's talking about her need for security, and what I do is I look at this thing, and as a man, I'm saying, what is this? I don't understand. I'm flipping it up in the air, and I drop it on the floor, and the audience starts laughing and stuff. I'm not treating this need very well. I'm not taking it very seriously. So after a while, when this happens, and our needs aren't being met, we take them back. And then Cindy keeps talking, and here's my need for significance. She's not going to trust this, and I take the rock and I start kissing it and petting it, because I need to feel significant. And then we decide, well, maybe we're going to trust each other again, and so we exchange them again, and so the pattern continues on, and the needs aren't being met, and so what happens is we keep exchanging them back and forth, and pretty soon, if those needs are not being met, guess what? What do I do? If she's not going to meet those needs, what do I do? There's a lot of things I can do. I can start out with porn. I can start out with looking for other ways that I can fulfill my needs. And then sometimes I'll take my need for significance and I'll go out into the audience and I'll start to hand it to another woman. It's a powerful illustration, isn't it? That's exactly what happens to us. And the same thing can happen with the woman. It's okay, honey, you can go sit there. And so the idea here is that at the root level, those needs need to be met. Well, guys, listen, if this whole thing started with a curse, who is the only one that can redeem a curse? Our God. We were never meant, listen, to have those needs met on this plane, on a lateral plane. We were meant to have those needs met, what? Vertically. And you've all seen the triangle, the God, the man, and the woman, okay? And what happens here is as the man and the woman get their deepest needs fulfilled, going way back to the garden, which is the way it was intended, get those deepest needs fulfilled by their Heavenly Father, and we allow the Lord to fill those needs and fill that vacuum in our life, then, listen, He uniquely enables us to meet those needs in each other on this plane. But unless that is happening, guys, we're trying to meet these needs in our flesh, oftentimes we'll fail. And so the important message today is two things. One, understand the nature of your women, what their deepest desires are is for security, and their reaction to abandonment and the critical nature that you might be seeing from them may have to do with their sense of not being fulfilled in that way. And the second important message is the only way you're going to break this cycle is by stepping up to the plate as a spiritual head of your home and recognizing that you need to get those needs met by God. Listen, men, if you're not praying together with your wives, there's nothing we can say from here or from the platform in the church that's going to help you. That the only answer is prayer. When Paul was referring to women in the church in Timothy, there are a lot of pastors that don't like to preach on this subject because it's kind of controversial. When Paul said that women should be quiet in the church, some people think that translation says, women shut up, you got nothing to say. Well, that's not what Paul was indicating at all. What was happening is the women were stepping up and were speaking in the church when it wasn't proper for them to be doing that. Listen, if a man abandons his responsibility and there's a vacuum there to be filled, guess what a woman will do? She'll fill it. And thank God for women in the church in America. Let me just say this. If it weren't for women in the church of America, I'm not sure the church would be here. Because for most of our history, guys, we men have abandoned our responsibility. There's nothing more than a woman wants than for a man to step up and make her feel secure by fulfilling his responsibility as a spiritual leader. What Paul was saying is the word quiet, by the way, in that flow of text in Timothy, it appears 3 times. And the translation is the Greek word, I believe, hesoshia. Hesoshia, the literal translation of that word, means to step back and live quiet and orderly lives. What Paul was saying is, ladies, resist your temptation to speak up, to fill the void that's being left behind by men maybe that weren't doing their job. Step back and live quiet and orderly lives, and I'll extend it and take some liberty here and pray for and encourage your men to go forward and take their rightful position of spiritual authority in the church. That's what the spirit of what Paul was trying to say. He was identifying the nature of a man and the nature of a woman. He was not saying, a woman, you have no place and you have no right. He's not saying that. So it's our responsibility, guys, to be able to do this. So when your discussion time today, and again, we have plenty of time this morning, so the life implication is not creating a sense of security for my wife will ultimately lead to serious difficulties in our marriage. Creating a sense of security is really what they're looking for. Life application, can you remember a time when you experienced the no-win cycle? You remember a time when you got into this cycle where you were feeling like a failure and you had this kind of conflict going on because she was feeling abandoned. And what practical things can I do to create a sense of security for my wife? Or you can broaden that out as a result of this teaching. What might be some practical things that I can do in my home, in my marriage, that would minister to my wife and create the kind of home that God desires? So you can, table leaders, of course, as always, you can broaden that out a little bit. If you've got someone at your table that it's got some difficulties that need to be dealt with, you're at liberty to do it any way you want. But those are a couple of broad questions. Have a great conversation, guys, and we've got we got plenty of time, lots of time. So go for it.
Here we are.
Huh? Toss them, no.
What table do you want me to go to?
Right here.